Okay, so after you created your self-portrait using graphite, you want to make sure that it's approximately life-size, that it captures the correct proportions, and that it also shows direct observation in the features and the overall portrait. It does not need to have a full range of value like mine does. It can just be a simple pencil sketch, and that is fine. You want to be able to use this to trace for working in charcoal. So it's a nice way to have preliminary experience with the self-portrait. But working in charcoal is going to be different than working in graphite. So graphite molecularly is more consistent in its application than charcoal. Charcoal molecularly breaks down in inconsistent ways, and so when you're working with charcoal, sometimes like larger pieces will kind of come off, or less will come off, and so you need to be really judicious about the pressure that you're using with it. It is much darker, or can get much darker than graphite. It doesn't have the shine that graphite has, which has been kind of an issue when I film myself working in graphite, is that you tend to get that kind of shiny reflectiveness from graphite. Charcoal won't have that necessarily. It's going to have more of a matte finish. Because it's less predictable and it's darker, it tends to be a more expressive medium. But there's different forms of it that can be controlled more easily. So supplies that you're going to need for our project in charcoal, or that you would like to have on hand for our project in charcoal, are it in its kind of like most purest form, which is like willow or vine charcoal. So this is charcoal that was just like, it's literally like a branch that's been like burned in a kiln with like very low filtration of air, and so it is it won't get as dark as other forms of charcoal. It's less permanent than other forms of charcoal, but it's kind of nice in that way that it's easy to kind of erase. So I have kind of two different sticks here. You can see that it's like kind of curved, so it's not something that's necessarily easy to apply using side strokes, and you can kind of use it on a tip, but it's not going to be as refined of a tip as like a charcoal pencil, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. Compressed charcoal comes in these sticks, and so compressed charcoal has a little bit of a binder in it, and so it tends to be a little bit more permanent than the vine charcoal. So it's a little bit harder to lift off and remove entirely from a paper, but it's still pretty forgiving, and it's also much darker. And since it is a little bit more permanent, it's sometimes a little bit better for finishing your artwork in compressed charcoal. So charcoal pencils are really just compressed charcoal, so charcoal with a binder mixed in, and then they are just wrapped up in a wooden jacket, and so they are nice because you can sharpen them to a point. So I tend to discourage you from sharpening these with a pencil sharpener. I recommend more like sharpening them with a utility knife, but you can use a hand sharpener with them, and you can use sandpaper to really get them to a really nice sharp point, but I don't know that that's always necessary. So compressed charcoal and charcoal pencils come in different grades. So two grades that I have that I'm going to be working with are hard charcoal, which is going to be more like the H end of the spectrum of charcoal, and I have a 6B charcoal, which is going to be darker and better for getting like nice rich value. Okay, along with charcoal, it's helpful to have like some cotton swabs, or something like this, or a paper towel for blending. Blending stumps and tortillons are nice. Having a variety of erasers on hand, or just one eraser that you're super duper comfortable with that's versatile, although I do highly, highly, highly recommend having a kneaded eraser. The nice thing about charcoal is that it's very versatile in that you can work additively and you can work subtractively, and that's something that we're going to be exploring in your self-portrait project, is we're going to work starting with a toned ground and then work subtractively and additively over top of that toned ground. So a kneaded eraser is nice because it will pull out some value, but not all of the value. A white eraser is nice because you can scrub out more value with that. And then certainly white erasers that come in these different forms are nice for like pulling out precise highlights and details that way. So those are the supplies that I recommend as far as like drawing and erasing. Your paper, it's best if you have a paper that has a tooth to it. And so I'm just going to be working on white paper that has a tooth. Tooth is just like a bumpiness to the paper, and the ridges of that bumpiness will kind of like grab the charcoal so you can get richer, darker values. I also recommend having a piece of scrap paper on hand just to kind of keep and protect your work from smudging. And then certainly if you have fixative available, being able to spray your work sometimes between adding details and at the very end of the making of the artwork, it's good to spray it with fixative so it doesn't get smeared and it retains that really nice high level of craftsmanship and value. Beyond that, you will need to set up your studio environment so you can work observationally from your reflection in a mirror. So having a mirror that you can look in is really important. Working observationally is really great for skill building because your eyes are going to be able to see more detail and you'll be able to capture more of the form working from your reflection than you would if you were working from a photograph. The camera basically takes the decision making and kind of the process that your brain goes through from taking something that's 3D and transferring it to something 2D. And so if you work from a photograph, your drawings tend to be have less developed form in them. And so we, of course, in the art department and Art 1, advocate a lot of working from observation when possible. So working observationally, you want to make sure that your setup is consistent from day to day. So ways that you can make sure that your setup is consistent is making sure that your light source is always coming from the same direction. I recommend having your light source kind of above and over to the left of you, so that way your highlights and shadows are always going to fall in the same place on your face when you're looking in the mirror. I recommend that you place your mirror in the same spot at the same height in relation to where you're sitting each time, and be aware of any other ambient light sources like window lighting or other lighting that's set up. So if you have like a direct light source that's stronger, illuminating you, you want to make sure that you're consistently placed with that light source and your mirror each from day to day. So you can mark things on the floor with tape. You can mark things on your desk, or just kind of make sure you do what you need to do to create reference points for yourself to make sure that you're working with the light source in relation to you and your mirror in relation to you and the light source consistently from day to day. Okay, so those are the main things that I wanted to cover, making sure that you are set up with a good preliminary sketch. Doesn't need to have a full range of value like mine does, can just be a line sketch and that's fine. That you have supplies, different forms of charcoal, erasers, blending tools, that you have a mirror, and that your mirror and your light source are set up in a way that you can easily make sure that you are consistently seeing yourself in that reflection the same or very similarly day to day.